Jake, how you doing today?
How's it going, Chad? Thanks for having me on, brother.
Yeah, dude, thank you for making the time for coming in, hanging out. I know you're a busy guy with, growing and selections and being out there. I'm surprised. I'm glad you're not Aspanibus, which is awesome.
Yeah. I don't actually go to events. Really, I haven't been to one yet so far. One of these days I'll go. But I'm so hooked to the grow room that it's like a ball and chain for me. I don't really go on vacation. I don't get to leave very often.
Well, that is really kind of the true grower. I mean, there were so many years, decades that I never took a vacation. When I was dating my wife at the time, we'd always, we would hang out and be like, I gotta go. It's like lights are coming on. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell her, lights are coming on. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta be home. So yeah, I feel you there. Uh, I mean, that's kind of maybe just a good intro because you've been around cannabis for more than a few years. So, can you maybe just for people who are new to your story, new to meeting you, how did you kind of come across cannabis? Was this a generational thing or was this just something you kind of picked up in your youth?
Both. It was generational. I grew up around it. I was, playing in my diapers underneath the plants. My dad was a really big dealer in the 70s and early 80s. Um, and when I was in high school, like freshman year, sophomore year, I started selling weed. I served in the Marine Corps. When I got out, I started interstate trafficking and driving up to farmers and, Paradise, Grass Valley and stuff and dealing that. I eventually got arrested for that, did time for it. Um, and then kind of, I've always been a smoker, but I stepped away from selling or doing anything like that for a while. I was on probation and all those things. Uh, and then my dad passed away in 2015. And kind of the only thing that was left to me after he died was a cut, the Romulan cut, and a collection of old seeds. And that's when I kind of got back into it and started giving cuts away. I grew it, I had flower, gave it to locals, and they, this is really great. Can I get a cut? And so I gave them cuts. And the more people that grew it, the more word came back to me. You really got to spread this cut around. You got to get it out in the community. And so I did that for years. I ended up gifting it to Dan from Dark Heart Nursery back in 2016 or 2017, something like that. And he sent it off to, Nat Pennington from Humboldt Seed Company and all these guys up in the Humboldt Triangle, and they all grew it and verified it. And eventually, it took them a couple of years, but they eventually started selling the clones through Dark Heart Nursery. And around that time, I was kind of just thinking, I've completed my mission, everything's done here, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll grow for myself, and that's it. And Romulan genetics wasn't even a concept; it wasn't even something I had planned. And then I had Canadians and Europeans asking me to make them seeds because they couldn't get the cut. And so I made rig seeds and sent them out. And that was kind of when Romulan genetics first became a thing. And I made this little logo here real quick. And it was kind of just a joke to me at the time. It was like, make this little fake company to go with these seeds. And the Canadians grew them out and they got word of mouth from a bunch of them. And they were telling me, this is the best Romulan I've ever grown. Can you make feminized seeds? And I made the feminized seeds, and as soon as those went out, then people started asking me to make crosses, and I had already kind of been messing with that for myself. And next thing I knew, I had a couple seed banks, and one of them called me up and said, "We want to buy all of them. We want every single pack you have of all the feminized crosses you made." And they bought them up, and they all sold out within a month. And then that was when the ball just started rolling and kind of getting out of control. And I did my other career. I owned an electrical engineering company and I did architectural design. I made really good money doing that. But about 2 years into Romulan genetics, I just decided this was what I want to do for the rest of my life. I love it. I took a huge pay cut by retiring from my other company and closing it down. But I love what I do a lot more now. I spend a lot of time interacting with customers and people. And I don't know, there's really nothing better than this that I've ever done before in my life.
No, I mean, there's a lot to be said for loving what you do. And I imagine it's awesome because I'm already seeing some parallels between us. I was just kind of making genetics for myself, giving them out to people in need. Then more people started kind of asking for them. And I'm like, geez, I should probably start giving these things names instead of just actual crosses. And then, yeah, one thing led to another. Now there's a website and all this stuff.
Right.
And we probably, well, I mean, given your previous job, that's a pretty demanding job as well. But I know, like, I work more hours now than I ever have, but I
Mm,
love what I do. And I imagine it's probably the same for you. You're
right.
still working a ton, but the reward is much greater.
Yeah. You know, I miss being able to go on vacations and take time off. I could do that really easily with my old job. Um,
Yeah.
but and you're right. I work, you know, almost 18-hour days every single day, 7 days a week, nonstop. But I don't ever really. I mean, occasionally I get stressed out, and occasionally this job's hard, and it is a really difficult thing to be a breeder and deal with all of the different things you got to deal with. But it's outside of those little moments, you know, an hour or two here or there where I'm, you know, stressed and freaking out. The rest of the time, it's like a dream. You know, it really is. I get to hear from
I
customers where, you know, the things I've made have changed their lives, and you know, I get to communicate with people all over the world and make, you know, make new friends every day, just about. So it's can't really beat this. You know, what I was doing before was just working behind a computer by myself all day, and that gets old real quick.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, sorry, I didn't mean yeah, but comparatively, you do impact people's life in a positive way there, but it can be so much more tangible with what we do. And like I believe in this plant medicinally. I use it medicinally for myself. That's what got me on the course of what I'm doing now. So it's cool to hear too that you have a little bit of that backing. I mean, do you use, or if I may ask, are you using cannabis medicinally yourself, or have there been a few,
Yeah.
examples you can think of where it really has changed people's lives?
Yeah. That's really the whole reason this whole thing started out for me. It was, my dad passed and I had the plant and it was my dad's, and there was a certain thing with that, but it was small, it was my dad's plant and I got to keep it alive. That's my responsibility. But to me, that was a smaller weight than I've, for my service in the Marine Corps and some other, things that have happened to me in my life. I have really, really bad nerve damage, and I am,
Mm.
up until a few years ago, for about 10 years of my life, I dealt with just random sporadic pain that would sometimes keep me bedridden. I couldn't really do anything. Really debilitating pain, like curled up in a ball screaming in pain the whole time.
Yeah.
And I ended up, going to doctors, and I got on a nerve blocker called gabapentin. And over time,
Yeah.
it worked for me, and then it would dissipate and we'd bump up the dosage. So towards the end, I got up to where I was on about 40,000 milligrams a day of gabapentin, which is way, way, way beyond what anyone's ever supposed to take. I
Yeah.
forget now what it is, but it's somewhere around 4 to 10,000 milligrams a day is the maximum that any doctor should ever be prescribing to anyone. But I built up a tolerance to it, and it worked for me when we got to that. So I grew the Romulan out that I got, and smoked the flower, and I started noticing over time that when I would smoke the Romulan, I wouldn't really have a pain episode for a few days, maybe a week. And I just kind of put it together and got this wild hair up my butt one day. I was like, told my doctor, I'm going to wean myself off gabapentin. And she said, don't, it's going to screw you up. You're going to end up in the hospital. And it took me like 2 weeks. I just really quickly
Wow.
weaned off it. There was another 2 weeks after that. So it was a total of a month. But the last 2 weeks, I took like one pill a week, and that was it. And it worked. It changed my life so much. I go snowboarding weekly now. I go mountain biking regularly, and I used to do all that stuff before I had these issues. So I feel like I'm like back to living life again and everything. And it was really horrible the 10 years where I couldn't do those things. So to me, it was like Romulan actually saved my life. I mean, it really did. I was in a pretty dark place at the end there. And as I started, giving cuts out and giving flower to people, and then eventually selling seeds, it was one of the best feedbacks I've ever gotten from someone was, and I tell this story often, but it was a Vietnam War vet that his son had contacted me and got my seeds and grew it out, and then gave me this report back later. And I think he had made Rick Simpson oil out of it. I can't quite recall entirely, but what he told me was that basically his dad, since like 78, hasn't been able to sleep in the same bed with his mom, his wife. They sleep in separate rooms because he has night terrors, and his life is just horrible when it comes to sleeping. And within a couple weeks of having the Rick Simpson oil, they they had a new bed and they were sleeping in the same bed together in the same bedroom. And to me, that was, I've always had sleep issues. I've always had, my dad's a veteran. I served, and there was like nothing I could have heard better than that to, just put a fire under me to keep doing this. And I've had a bunch of things since then, real similar things, but that to me was one of the biggest ones that I've heard.
That choking a little here. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Hits close to home.
The whole thing
I'm
with
sorry.
No, it's okay. The whole thing with the history of Romulan and my dad's involvement and the original guys who were making it before my dad got involved, they were all war veterans, and the constant thing that was through the years was it helps their PTSD. And I've noticed that myself. I mean, it's kind of like an off switch for PTSD, and I have a really bad case of it. I can turn to any one of my crosses that has Romulan in it, or I can turn to Romulan, and it's very effective. Within a half hour, I feel centered again. I feel whole. I don't have all this static and fog and all these other issues going on. So there's a connection there where this has been like veterans weed for decades. Yeah. And so as soon as I heard from a son of a veteran that it changed his life for the better, it was, it floored me. It really did. I got choked up just like you.
That's all the motivation you need, in the world is even if that is where it stopped, if your impact stopped right there, that is still freaking amazing. And the impact doesn't stop there. Like the strain Romulan, I definitely want to talk about it because I've known about that for, long time, as long as I've almost known strain names, as being very effective, being kind of a heavy hitter, being something that can help with sleep, something that helps with PTSD. So it's definitely, I look at that particular cultivar as kind of a tool. And you've done a lot of other work. So, and I want to get into that too, because you've done many other things as well as preserving this Romulan, which is so important to many people. Have you ever looked or had the ability to get like a terpene analysis or cannabinoid analysis on it? Is there anything striking as far as like minor cannabinoids go?
The standout to me is how many different cannabinoids and terpenes it has in it. Not every lab can test for everything.
Right. You pay more. The more they test, the more you pay.
Exactly. But I've had labs that I've done myself from multiple different labs. I've had labs from commercial cultivators that I've sent the cut to, and Pro Farm is one of them that sells my Romulan cut and has been for years, selling the flower in dispensaries. And they, through crop steering, were able to get it up to, above 30% THC levels. And pretty high. One of the lab reports they sent me was an extremely high for flower. It was 5 or 6% terpenes. It was really, really high. But what I've always noticed in all the different lab reports, whether it's mine or other people sending them to me, is that it's a large amount of terpene compounds. A lot of stuff that you see tested, they maybe have 15 to 20, but they drop off a cliff really quick after about the first 5 or 6. As far as the quantity that's in there. And Romulan it's almost every terpene that they have. And, at the bottom, it'll be really trace amounts, but it has just a little bit of everything in there. So I don't really know exactly what makes it stand out, whether it's, the entourage effect or terpenes or the different types of cannabinoids, but it has CBG in it really well. It has some other things in there that other strains lack. And,
sorry.
Yeah. So it's mainly that it has a lot more compounds in it than other strains.
And we're learning more every day. Not just us, but the scientists and the pharmaceutical companies are learning more every day about the interactions and the terpenes. So it's cool to see that there's a wide array of them. We may not know how they necessarily interact, but the wide array being there points to something. Again, we're all kind of working with anecdotal evidence at this point, but mountains of anecdotal evidence leads a lot of times to scientific breakthroughs, and that, I mean, pretty much describes cannabis. Let's see here. Where did Sean Kirk go? We had a question here from Sean Kirk. It said, do we know the genetics of Romulan? Like, do we know what maybe the parents are?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Some of it's a little, back in the day when they were doing this, we didn't really have strain names for the most part.
No.
So everything was regional, and it was, based on, heirloom or semi-land race type things. So what Romulan is, and I guess we'll just talk about the strains first. We'll get into history later. Romulan is Korean Thai, crossed with a Mexican sativa, crossed with Colombian red, crossed with Afghani indica, and then backed to the Colombian red at the end. And that's where they stopped breeding.
Okay. A lot of power in there. I just from, face value, I hear a lot of tall, probably longer flowering plants, but then you add in that Afghani, and I wonder if that's where some of the potency, as far as like the deeper potency, is coming from. The body potency, I guess I should say.
Yeah, what was passed down to me was that the aim of the breeding, which it was very loose breeding, it wasn't really specific selections and things that they were doing, kind of open pollination and passing things around and observational and anecdotal. What they were doing was, because these were guys in British Columbia that had Canadian War veterans that had come back from the Korean War. And this goes all the way back to the late 50s when they started. They were trying to breed it so that the plant would grow easier up in colder climates. It was a Thai varietal, so I'm sure it was an absolute nightmare to try to grow in British Columbia. And so over time, all that breeding that they were doing was, it's easier to grow and get to harvest, and we get a little more out of it. But the failures along the way were when it doesn't have that same smoke, doesn't have that same flavor, and those same effects. And one of the remarks that was passed down was, once they crossed it to the indica, they hated it. They couldn't stand it.
Oh, no.
They immediately backed it to the Colombian because that made a pretty good difference, and they liked the way it came out with that. But as soon as they backed it to the Colombian, for whatever reason, that seed stock, the progeny, put out a lot of what they were looking for.
And then were they, it sounds like they were able to kind of keep it in clone form, and did it kind of just, they found the cut and it kind of existed there, or was it just kind of, we're going through more of them and they're all,
this was,
Romulan,
so it was,
that name.
It was a group of growers. And up until Mark Emery and Vic High and Joe Slikerman, who everyone knows as Romulan Joe, got involved in the 90s, it was just kind of, some guys probably had cuts that knew how to keep clones alive and take clones, but it was everyone kind of had their own, cut and their own phenotype of it. And it was just seed stock for the most part. My family cut that I have now was kept alive since early mid 90s, somewhere around there. And kept in my family. It's the same, before Subcool passed, he confirmed it was the same cut he used for all of his breeding. I'm not entirely sure how he got it. But he got it. It was the same cut that he used. The Vic High cut is what Rick Campanella from Brothers Grimm Seeds and his business partner, back in the 90s, bred Space Queen with and stuff. Now they've replaced Vic High's cut with my cut. I gifted it to him because my cut's really similar to the Vic High cut. It's more of a dwarf sativa style. The Romulan Joe cut is very much more an indica Romulan.
Okay, so there's a few different cuts out there, but again, kind of coming from the same family tree.
Right.
Sounds like, okay, well, that's good. I mean, again, that's very common with a lot of the kind of the strains that are out there today. Again, you're absolutely right. Early on, things didn't have real good names, or consistent names, I should say. That almost changed regionally, which is why a lot of them were named for the region they came from. The 90s to me is really when names kind of started popping up. And it was really, it's like, back then I knew of Romulan as long as I can remember. I don't know when it came up, but I do remember seeing you, it's probably like 4 years ago now, on the James Loud show over on the Future Cannabis Project, which was
with the Dogga guys.
Yeah, the Dog Garden, which is a good introduction. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you do have genetics on your website, correct?
Yeah, we've
Okay.
got www.romulangenetics.com, got a website up, and it's got also a page called Seed Bank Partners, and we've got about 20 different seed banks that we deal with, some in Europe, some mostly here. And so you can get seeds directly from us, you can get them from any of our seed banks. Most of my new
Okay.
drops are every seed bank's carrying it just about.
Okay. Yeah, and the Daga, that's kind of where I was going with that. But I do want to let people know, always good to go direct to the breeder if you can. That's the best way to do it. You do have your website, so that is available. But like I know I don't ship internationally, so I have Daga.garden, and they do that. So it's great to
Right.
have beans in other places as well. We know about the effects, and I want to continue talking genetics. We'll maybe move on from Romulan, because you have some other things I want to talk about, some selection and stuff. But before we do, the effects are already clear. The reason why you enjoy Romulan, clear.
Mm-hmm.
What about the profile? Is it, and again, this is subjective, so there may be somebody in chat's like, no, it smells like this, or but for you, what is the profile, and what are kind of I don't know, what's the experience like with Romulan?
Yeah, so as far as flavors and smells go, smells are a little bit funkier, real dank, very, very strong, potent smells. Flavor is a like kind of a even forward cross of skunk and pine that you get right in the beginning. And then it's got a very spicy, peppery, complex flavor that you get throughout the middle of it. I like it a lot. It's really, really delicious. The effects are, if you smoke smaller amounts of it, it acts like a sativa, gives you some energy. It's more like a hybrid in a sense that you smoke a small amount, it gives you some energy, picks you up, gets you going, cleaning the house, all those things. I can smoke it at night though. If I smoke, a whole joint, or I smoke a little bit more of it and get saturated, it just shuts me down, and I sleep like a baby on it. So it's one of those things where you can use it throughout the day, and as long as you're not toking too much of it, it's always kind of a clear-headed, really easy to think. I have a lot of stuff that if I smoke a little bit too much, I don't feel safe driving. It's like I'm not there. And Romulan, I mean, I can just shoot down 3-4 joints of it straight, and I can take a test, drive my car, 100%. I'm no problem at all. But I have that, that body high feeling, and in your head too. But it kind of centers your focus, and it's a weird strain in the sense that you can get really stoned off it if you want, but it's like medicine. It just makes me feel better and gets me going throughout my day.
And that's what I look for too, in the morning, because I'm kind of, wake up to go to sleep. I always describe myself as a sipper. I never like sit there and take the bong load to the head. I'm just kind of constantly sipping throughout the day. And I need something like that for the daytime to keep me clear, keep me energetic, kind of keep me on pace with what needs to get done. Because again, there's a lot to get done. But I do also enjoy, in the evening, 10:30, 11 o'clock rolls around. Okay, I'm going to close the computer for the day. I just want to sink into my recliner chair and maybe watch a little UFC highlights or something. That's kind of how I go. So that is one of the, again, that's just a classic cut, and that's been around for a long time. Maybe let's talk about one of your newest projects. What is one of the newer things that you're working on, and how did you get started down that road?
Yeah. So the newest thing I'm doing, I guess, is as far as projects. I mean, I'm always making new cultivars, and the way that I release things is kind of got a rule where I only drop one new strain per month. And the way it ends up at the end of the year, I'm usually only dropping about 6 to 8 new things per year, because the rest of the time I'm doing restocks. In December, I don't drop anything. It's Christmas. You should spend money on your family. And I always take like a month or two off in the summer from dropping anything, because it slows down and people don't need seeds in the summertime. But right now, what I've been doing is I created this classification to let my customers know every now and then I have something that's called Black Label Certified. So it's my way of saying this is my personal favorite, what I think is the best of the best of what I made. And a few years ago, I released the very first one, and it was called Rom Scotty, and it's a cross of Biscotti and Romulan. And it came out a lot better than I thought it would. I didn't really have much hopes for it when I was making the cross, but it, every now and then you cross things and they make a true hybrid and everything's, and it was fantastic. And the test came in, 40% total cannabinoids and really high terpene counts and just freaking excellent smoke. Progeny's really good. So as soon as I released it, I knew, this is going to be a big winner, and I designated Black Label Certified, and now, a ton of people have been growing it and loving it. I started a pheno hunt back then when it was first dropped, and I'm just now wrapping this multi-year pheno hunt up, and I've got it down to about 4 winning selections. I've had a bunch of clone banks asking me for cuts, and it's something I've never really done. I've given my cuts to commercial facilities, and whenever I'm doing a collaboration with a breeder, I'll give them cuts. But I just don't have cuts available. You can't buy cuts, and I don't send them out to anyone other than those particular situations. So I had some friends that own clone banks asking me, for a while, can we get cuts? Can we offer you cuts? And so that I started this pheno hunt for my own. But that's the whole point of it, is to eventually get a Rom Scotty cut into clone banks. I've already got a communion cut that I can put into clone banks. And that'll probably be like a little side project focus of mine as time goes on. I'll do that with some other things I've made and try to get clones out there so that people who prefer to go from clone or don't really like hunting through seeds can go that route. Or if they just want, if they've already hunted through my seeds and they want the breeder cut, then they can just go straight to it and get it.
There's definitely like three types of consumers out there, or at least like three segments. There's the commercial segment, which wants everything uniform, and they'll usually go from seeds. I mean, sometimes clone, yes, but the larger they are, the more they want seed, which takes a freaking lot of work. But then there's like the home consumer, the craft growers, which I consider myself. I consider a lot of the people that watch the show, listen to the show. And, I kind of break it down like seeds a lot of time, particularly in kind of today's markets, people are hunting for uniforms. They're not as uniform as like the commercial people would want. They're not as uniform as things used to be because it takes a lot of time and effort to get there. So the seed group kind of is like looking for the unicorns, but people who want that reliability, like I want this, I don't want to mess around, clones. And the clones have really taken off in the past couple of years. I've seen, maybe because it's the farm bill as well. I know that opened the doors for a lot of seeds, but shipping clones, man, which again, that scares me a little bit because we all know bug infestations and whatnot, but there's also the, hop latent and probably a few other things we're not aware of yet in circulation too. Is there anything that for like your clones that you're going to do for like preventative measures? Do they get dips beforehand?
I won't be selling them myself. I'll be sending them to clone facilities and they'll do all that. Okay. I'll never sell clones myself because even though the farm bill offers some seeming protection there's no protection. If you're not licensed and properly, it's illegal. You can't do it. And I've had friends get shut down just for running clone facilities that weren't licensed. I'm never going to go back to prison if I can help it. So, it's not worth it to me. So that's why I've never offered them in the past. And anything that comes out, I'll let people know through my social media and website and stuff that we've sent, breeder cuts to this clone bank or these clone banks, and you can get them from them. And it probably won't be too long after that where pretty much every clone bank will have it because that's the way things work out. But so I won't be doing it myself. I don't have to worry about testing for HLVD or any of those things.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, for anybody who's curious and wondering, it's like, it may be okay to have anything under 0.03 THC, but there's also different state regulations like phytocertification. These are the things that keep disease, like in Washington, we have the apple maggot quarantine area. You're not allowed to bring fruit out of this area to other areas of the country because pests and disease. So phyto certification, that's something that's important. Who knows? I mean, that's, we joke out here in Washington, we got the Colorado russets about 10 years ago. We never had them out here, but then everybody started exchanging clones of Colorado, and well, thank you, russet mites. So yeah, good to have somebody else do it and take care of those details. Again, a larger facility like that probably has a lot of protocols and standards in place to check for these types of things and protect the customer. Word gets around pretty fast, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with the genetics, I just had one up on the screen here, and I kind of love the name of it though. It's the Irie Maiden, and this was one of the Black Label certified cuts that you were mentioning as well. So maybe can you give us a little bit of background here on the Irie Maiden?
Yeah, so that's a project I started a few years ago. Well, longer than that, probably 3 years ago. It is Gorilla Butter from Fresh Coast Seeds. I hunted through, got a nice selection of that, and was already hunting through a pack of Red Hots from Lupos Maniacs or Lupos Canna Seeds. It's had a couple different names, but he's a breeder who's been around since like 2010. And I ended up crossing the Gorilla Butter to the Red Hots, just having fun on my own, doing things, and really liked what I got from it. Had something really special, and decided to cross that with Romulan, and it created Irie Maiden. It's really, really good. So it's my new Black Label certified. The first one that I released was an indica dominant Black Label certified strain. That's Rom Scotty. This one's a hybrid strain. And it sits right in the middle. You'll get some outliers that are pure indicas that, great indica smoke. You'll get some outliers that are pure sativas. But for the most part, everything you're going to find is hybrid smoke. It's really special, got a really, really great taste to it. It's like strawberries and cream throughout almost the entire progeny. And real low rates for runts and mutants. It just really, really good stuff. I like it a lot. And it's every time that I've run it and I've had testers run it and everything, it's kind of like every pack has got multiple keepers in there. And it's really easy to have something, even though it's all in the same family, it's easy to find something that's kind of unique to your own. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. It doesn't drop till April 4th. It comes out in about 3 weeks. And it'll be, a lot of the stuff that I put out, I don't do restocks of unless people, say, hey, please make more of this. So like a lot of things like rock salts that just dropped last month, when that's finally sold out, that's it. I'm done with it. And most of the things I release are that way. But Irie Maiden will be something that will be kept permanently in stock for years down the road. I'm really happy with it. And it's not like the other strains I'm not happy with. Like rock salts, I think is one of my best I've ever made. It could easily be Black Label certified. But I kind of have a plan. I wanted to drop an indica Black Label certified, then a hybrid, and then a sativa. And so I'm kind of working through that first. And once I drop a sativa, then I'll just have fun and do whatever I want after that. But yeah, Irie Maiden's really good. People who like beautiful plants, who like a really strong, potent smoke, they'll love Irie Maiden.
Irie Maiden. And then if I just continue scrolling down the page, now I'm seeing rock salts down here as well. A nice, beautiful color to it.
Yeah, rock salts is really good. It uses the same Red Hots that I hunted through from Lupos. I crossed that Red Hots with Pineapple Express, and then selected something from that, crossed it with the Romulan. And so with the rock salts, you'll get a lot of sweet and candy. There's some really good genotypes in there that are like gingerbread and persimmon cookie. And really, really, really unique flavors that I've found hunting through that. And a lot of my testers found some really good stuff too. But it's that rock salts to me is like, it's what I've been smoking mostly myself. I've got a couple jars right here, and it's just the bag appeal of the flower is absolutely insane. And every time I just look at it, I get happy, but as soon as you taste it, it's like, you got to smoke more of it. You got to immediately smoke more of it.
The jar test, man. There is no better test than the jar test. Which one do I keep going back to? Which one do other people at the party keep going back to? Like the jar test is where it's at, man, because a lot of times there's no numbers attached. It's just all profile and how it makes you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Important.
It's the best way to do it.
Absolutely. One of the things too, if I keep scrolling down, there's the salty pickle, which Chunky Nugs was asking about earlier. And come back to this. I wanted to show another thing on your. Oh, geez, I'm not on the page. Let me start sharing it again. Another thing I wanted to share on your page too is obviously, again, guys, this is what the website looks like. I didn't link it in the show notes because YouTube has this love of checking those and giving channels strikes if it has anything cannabis on the front page. But Jake's IG is down there. You can also find the Romulan Genetics link right here. This is the page you're going to find. So you do have a way to connect with him through the show notes. But if you want to go directly to the website, this is what it looks like. Veteran owned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
A little bit below this is something that is unique and something that I think is very beneficial when we're talking about genetics, because people, whether you're new or old to this, know that there is a little bit of a name game, for better or worse, in this industry. Some of it is malicious. A lot of it is pure honesty. Like if you handed me something and said, hey, this is salty pickle, I'll be like, well, this is, I believe him. It's the salty pickle. And I would forever pass it on as salty pickle. But if there was a mistake in your grow room, or, the tags got mixed, or you didn't really want to let that one out, but you had something close, people understand these things happen. And that's how we get a lot of arguing about what's real and what's not. And truth be told, until we get genome mapping of, the entire genome for a lot of these, we're not going to know. So that's really the end all be all. So the reason why I bring that up is because you're taking an effort here to kind of avoid that with at least seeds. Because I don't think this is something that a lot of people have grasped, even though it's right in front of your face, and a lot of newer growers don't think about, because we know the name game happens with like clones. We know the name games happen with, flower and product, and it also happens with seeds too. But there's some pretty jerky people out there who will buy a pack, take it out, use the seeds, put whatever the hell they want back in it, and then sell it again. Can you maybe explain this feature and kind of why it came about, what it's actually doing for people? Because I really like it, man. This is a step ahead.
So it is, in part, it's scammer proofing my packs of seeds. So in part of it, it's just security labels and just making sure that every pack of seeds is sealed with that security label. You can verify that it's mine because it's got serial numbers, multiple ones, it's got my logo on it. And people can't go and just fake that through Can Verify. They'd have to print those out on their own, totally separate of Can Verify, which means if you scanned it, it wouldn't go to the Can Verify. So there's really good protection there. But what it is, on every seed pack, there's this security label that he's showing there. And on the front of the pack is the QR label. If you point your cell phone camera at it, it automatically, you just click the little link and it brings up the website for that strain. And what it has is all of the grow information that's available on the website. It has several different photos. It has lab reports for the flower, so that you as the grower have all that information at your fingertips right on the pack of seeds. So if I die tomorrow and you hold on to those pack of seeds for 5 years before you grow them, and my website's gone and there's just no information out there that you can easily find, and I'm not available to ask, you can just scan your pack of seeds and you've got everything right there. You know what to expect from growing them. I give a lot of information in the detailed listing. So it's going to tell you about its, resiliency to different pests and temperatures and environments. It's going to tell you how the progeny kind of breaks down. It's going to tell you what to expect from the smoke. And then you can see the lab results. So, I'm not just, blowing smoke up your ass, and you can see the pictures of the plant. So when you grow it, that's about what you should expect. And it's done this way. So a lot of people actually miss it, don't even know. I mean, most people get my seed packs and they just rip it right through the QR code. Never know that exists. All the top of the packs of seeds on the label says at the very top, it says scan, and it's got little arrows pointing, says, scan the QR code for grow info. But that's what it's there for. It's so that My sales manager doesn't have to flag emails all the time responding to people saying it flowers for 9 weeks. You can access
Yeah.
all that info yourself. But two, it's so that you have all of that. And it's also kind of another way to, breeders put things out, and then all that information will kind of disappear really quick. And then people will go to ask the breeder and they don't respond. And it turns out that whatever they may have told you in the beginning wasn't really accurate. And I'm putting it all down in stone so that later you can grow it and go, none of this was like you explained, screw you. And you can get mad at me. Please don't, but you can do that. And that's part of why it's there to protect my growers. It's there to protect me. And it makes sure that whatever anyone gets is a pack of seeds. It's what they bought. It's not something else. So there's a lot to it, but it's mainly about having that information at your fingertips.
I really like having that information there because, again, it's setting people up for success. Like, we don't want to just make a sale, as they say. We want people to grow good medicine, and that is through success. So yeah, setting them up with realistic expectations. Again, that's super important. If you had something that was 11 weeks and something else that was 8 weeks, people may have a hard time managing their tents or their room. So they can kind of coordinate based off that information. You could get an idea of the profile and the effects. But one of the big, and I love how you said, and if it doesn't add up, you can hate me. No, don't hate him. But that's something that I say too, because I'm very big on descriptions, very big on, again, trying to set people up for success. And I always say anybody could put words on paper, but when you find a breeder where they give you that good bulk of detail and then you grow it out and it's spot on or it's very close, that's a really good sign. Try another one. And then if, again, it's on, to me, what that says is this person has actually tested their genetics. They've, run probably more than one plant and they know how it grows. That is something that is missing from a lot of people today. And again, anybody could put words on paper. So if they, are wrong, they probably didn't run it either. So testing, man, that's a big part. How does that process start for you? Is it all like the first phase? Is it in-house? Do you have a few people you can use?
And it's the most important part. When I was younger, when we were, buying seeds off the back of the High Times magazine or wherever it was we were getting them, that was, the biggest thing. You could order from the breeder. You'd get this catalog and it would have photos and really, really detailed breakdowns, like a whole story about the strain. And you could talk to people, and, once forums came around and we had the internet, you could talk to people on overgrow.com and stuff, and they would tell you, it's legit. It's so good, go get it. And I miss that. At some point, probably around 2007 or 8, and after that, we lost total touch with that, where a lot of people were just pumping out strains and putting out new seeds constantly. And we're at a point now where there's a good portion of people that don't test themselves, don't really grow it out themselves. And at best, someone else's facility has grown it once and they've got a couple pictures of a plant. But I think that's what's really missing. I'd like to see, I'm not trying to be I don't know. I'm not trying to be someone who stands up and changes the industry or anything, but I would really like to see in 5 or 10 years, the majority of breeders copying these things, that having a QR code, doing lab tests before they sell it, so you can, giving everything you can to the customer, so that they know. And then it also, like you said, when you grow it out, if it's nothing like what was explained, if the photos don't look, then that, you got a decision to make, whether you go and support another breeder or stick with that one. For me, whenever I make something, I start out, and I've kind of just adjusted things a little bit, but what I've always done in the past is I'll make a new cross, and I almost immediately, because I'm chomping at the bit, I start popping some seeds. And the first test grow that I do is, a good test grow, but I'm trying to squeeze in as many of the new things as I can. So maybe only 2 or 3 plants, some cases 6, but I'm just trying to fill this whole room with all my new things that I've made. And if I like what I'm seeing from that first grow, if I don't have, a lot of herm problems from this strain or whatever it is, then they'll go into phase 2. And phase 2 is I've got I've always kind of had at least about 50 testers going back years. Now I've got over 200 testers. I normally like to keep it about 150 because 200 is way too many. I send it off to them. It costs like over $1,000 to ship seeds to all these different people, and it takes a whole week of packaging things. It's a nightmare. But I send them out to everyone. It's a nightmare.
This is true story.
I mean, my house is filled with people, and we're like all these little envelopes, and we're just doing it nonstop and going crazy. So I send it out to them, and I give them like a timeline window. Please try to have this harvested within 6 months to a year is usually the window. Report to us back if you can by June 1st or whatever it is that we tell them. And then I start my second test grow while I'm waiting to hear back from them. And my second test grow is I intentionally grow it wrong from the beginning of flower. And usually about 2 weeks in veg before it gets into flower. I don't mess with them too much when they're seedlings. I want to have stuff to hunt through and actually test. But what I do is I basically try to make all the mistakes new home growers make. When you don't know what you're doing and you don't have anyone to give you advice and you're just kind of winging it and you do all kinds of different things that the plant hates and doesn't like, I try to replicate those things. I want to find out that this is something I should never release. That's my intention. So when the plants start going into flower, I'll start stressing them. And during flower, I'll do things like pretty wide EC swings, pH swings. I'll adjust the humidity up and down, and I kind of bounce back and forth so the plants can never get used to it. And I do, really high temperature swings. So in the past, I've learned 125 degrees will kill all your plants in the room, and going down below 40 will probably kill all the plants in the room. But I've literally pushed things 105, 110, 150, and just kept going to see where they would fail. And now I've kind of got it down to where I'll usually bring the grow room up to around 100, a little over that, keep it there for 3 or 4 days, maybe a week, and then go the opposite direction after a few days of stable environment. Then I'll go down to really cold temps. But I do that with everything. I overwater, I underwater. I take plants out in the beginning and put them in the forest for a day or two, let them get a bunch of pests on them, put them back in the room, and then I don't IPM spray the whole test grow. So I want to see this strain. This strain's really susceptible to mites, or thrips or leaf miners or whatever, and has almost no resilience. And to me, that might be just the reason alone that I don't release it. If it's really great smoke and it's a really good progeny and it happens to just be terrible against mites, I still might release it. But a lot of the stuff I've just been like, no, I don't want someone to send me this spider web covered plant and be like, what the hell happened? Because a lot of plants out there have natural resistance to pests, and you don't have to do too much other than keep a clean grow room. But other plants, other strains, I've seen it myself many times, it's like they attract them. As soon as you put that in your garden, you're getting mites. So I do all those things and then rely on my test growers to give me, a broad, what's going to happen in the real world here. And if they pass all of that, then they end up getting released. And generally, what I make, about 30 to 50% of it ends up getting released to market. The rest just gets scrapped. And if anything, it might become part of another cross, but that's it.
Sometimes there's potential there, but it's not necessarily like that, that 9 or that 10 that you want. It's having quality control is good. I mean, ultimately you want all killer and no filler, but it hurts sometimes when you're limited on time or you're limited on space and something, you're just like, it's like an 8.2. You're like, what do I do? But then that's where, just the personal goals and, integrity comes in. Like I'm sitting on something right now and I'm like, it's like an 8.2. We're going to do some more testing. And I smiled. Jonathan's one of my testers. He's in chat. He says I do that for him. He helps test the No Joke on the slash. Actually, he's helped test everything for me for the last few years, so he's a freaking stud. But in his greenhouse this summer, I'm not going to say where he is, but it was 120 degrees continually for weeks, and it was like one of those fun experiments. You keep like eating popcorn, waiting for the plant to die, just like, okay, any day. took it like a champ. So,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, he does some awesome stress testing for me. And being in Western Washington, where I'm at, it rains too early here. I mean, you can grow outdoors here, but it's not smart to grow outdoors here. So
Right.
I don't, and I don't have the ability to test that. So it's great that you're able to use other people, and that's a good wide net as well. I mean, pretty much every mistake will at least be repeated a few times, and you'll still probably get some crazy one-offs from that amount of testing. But growing it in different environments, I tend to think that's very important, because we're not able to duplicate or think of everything that other growers are doing.
Yeah, and other than, there's brackets, but almost every grower that's kind of isolated on there, everyone does things a little bit differently. There's always some different variable that someone's doing, whether it's what they put into their soil or the type of soil or the light or whatever it is. So sending it off to, I kind of have found that having at least 50, somewhere between 50 and 100 group testers before it gets sold to the public, is that sweet spot where you get to see all the different mistakes, all the different successes, and you get those averages of everything in the middle. So you know exactly what to tell people to expect, and it's accurate. It's not just what you saw. Because I've had that happen many times. I've grown stuff out and it's all just phenomenal for me. And then I send them to testers and they're like, it's shit. I hate it. And so it never makes it out to market. And some of those hurt the most because I'm like, it was so good for me and my grow. But nobody else really enjoyed it. Nobody else really liked it.
It's the head stash. You keep that one.
Exactly.
You keep one or two of those around for yourself. Keep growing it.
Yeah, I've still got a few like that.
Yeah. Andy from chat was curious, what is your preferred method of growing? Do you like soil? Do you do cocoa? Do you like hydroponics? Is there just one way that you like to grow?
So I started out 100% organic soil under HID lighting, and then eventually, did things with CMH lighting and all these different stuff. Now that my entire focus is breeding, and there's always got to be this stress test stage for everything that I'm growing. Because even when I get in new cuts, I put them through stress testing to see how resilient the potential P1 or P2 is going to be, the parent plant. So now I grow in cocoa. I use salt-based nutrients for the most part. I'm growing under LED lighting. And some of those decisions are because that's what most home growers are growing under. That's what a lot of professional commercial facilities are growing under. So I really enjoy an organic grow. That's the way for me. But because of what I do for a living, everything's in cocoa now. Everything's salt-based, and what that gives me is full control during my stress testing. I can overwater and underwater and not immediately kill the plant. And I can push it to its line of survival and see that line and get it to bounce back very quickly. And the ones that as soon as I go back to stable for 3 or 4 days before I go the other direction, if they don't bounce back in 3 or 4 days, I already know they're going to fail. They're not going to pass my test. So that's a big part of it. If I was doing this in soil, I couldn't do half of this at all.
No, soil's just way more forgiving. And I like that you brought it up in that context too, because I do different grows in different ways for that same reason. It's like we're trying to mimic the environment that it's going to go to. Yes, as much as I love my awesome freaking soil bags that I've got sitting right here, I do also have some plants over there sitting in cocoa that I'm feeding synthetic because I want to know. It's amazing, again, from being in diapers, being around this stuff, the technology shifts. Just even the technology shifts in the last 10, 15 years have been night and day. So it's kind of cool to think of where we'll be in another 10 years.
It's intense. We've got people behind the curtain right now that are, messing with DNA markers and figuring out, what actual genetic causes herm and intersex traits. And there's a lot of things 20 years from now that we're probably going to be on the cusp of being able to do that no one even thought about in the 80s and 90s.
Designer weed, man. We will, once they find the markers for different cannabinoids, terpene
Yeah.
synthesis, designer weed, which they'll be able to patent. But that's why we need to keep buying genetics and making more genetics. Keep the real stuff alive.
Yep.
So again, ultimately, for most people, effects are the number one like factor. But I always argue, well, I mean, effects are still the most important, but that's always the last thing you figure out. And there's been things in the growth phase that I'm like, you may have really good effects, but I never want to grow you again. So they'll just kind of get culled. Is there anything in particular that you're looking for, or do you kind of start with like different goals? Like, because as I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you maybe do some selection while the plants are still growing before we even get to the effects? Are you doing any selection at that point?
Yeah. So there's, sometimes there's different methods of going about. Sometimes the plants lead me in the direction I don't think about it. Other times I'm already coming up with a cross in my head just based off what I know, or, so sometimes there's different things going on there. But yeah, so whenever I'm doing selections, it starts in the seed phase and it goes from there. So what I do is I'll pop way more seeds than I need. If I'm going to try to fit 50 in the room, I'll pop 200 or 250 seeds. And then the 50 that end up going into germination will be the ones that develop the longest tails in the amount of time that they've been germinating. So they'll be the standout 50 compared to all the other ones.
Right.
If they're all really even, I try to, get critical about this one's got a thicker tail, or, if they're all the same length. But I have a way of picking out the top 50 seedlings. And then the same thing happens once you kind of go from seedling to veg stage. I'll look at which ones have grown the best, look the healthiest, have rooted the best as I'm transplanting them. And then I'll take clones once they're a little bit older in veg and see how quickly the clones root. And so each time I'm kind of dwindling them down a little bit. If I start with 50, I might knock out 5 or 10 from the seedling stage once they go to veg. And then I might knock out another 5 or 10 in clone. And so it goes all the way through to where I'm getting ready to flip. And this one just didn't even grow half the height of all the other ones. And most of them are all the same height. And that one gets kicked out. And then in flower, the same thing. It's, if they're not performing or keeping up. So it gets down to where I'm not trying to hunt through, I'm not trying to make a selection based on these 50 beautiful plants that are all just about perfect. I'm trying to make it based off these 10 plants that are all, they check every box all the way up to this point. And how do they look? How do they smell? And then how do they smoke at the end? That's the final decision. So how does it make me feel? How does it taste when I smoke it? And that's where the selection happens. But it's, like the Rom Scotty right now, I've got it down to 4 are left. And it's been a years long where I keep running different and adding to the top winners. And so I do that a lot. I'll find, the top 10 and keep the cuts, and then do another hunt of totally separate seeds and find the top 10, and then run those 20 together and be, what are the top 10 out of here? There'll be some from each group. Dwindled it down, and I did that. And at this very end here, I've got, out of 10, I've got the 4 that I think that's the tops. They're the best for me, and they're each a little bit unique in their own right. And so that makes the final selection a little difficult sometimes. Like right now, I'm smoking them all. I love the taste. I've got 2 that I think are going to win, and I can't quite decide. So I'm going to send them off for labs and then see what that looks like. And if one is considerably better than the other in lab work, then maybe that'll make the decision for me. But right now it's kind of like, I like them both. Maybe I'll just release them both. I don't know.
Hey, when you've got 2 good ones, never a bad thing. Do
Right.
you, kind of make your decision as far as like effects off of the seed plant, or do you actually take clones and then kind of grow the clones out? Maybe
In the end, it's off of the clones. But I might get rid of the seed plant based off the smoke from the seed plant and never see it in clone in some cases.
Okay.
But a lot of times, it starts with a seed plant. I've got a clone of it. I'll grow the seed plant out to harvest. And if it's a winner and I really like the smoke, 6 months or a year later, I'll be putting its clone up against some other things that I've hunted through. And if I still really like the smoke from the clone, then everything's great. I actually don't see a whole lot of, maybe it's just because almost everything I make is crossed with Romulan. But I don't see a whole lot of expression differences between seed and, clone generation 2, 3, 4. I know a lot of people talk about that. I personally don't really see it. If I'm growing it the exact same way that I grew it as seed, I usually get pretty much the same thing in the end.
Yep. That's for many, many years I felt the exact same way. And to a large extent I still do. I never noticed a huge shift in the like finished profile or the effects. A lot of times I tend to see it maybe in trichome density or like finished bud size. And, as far as like finished size, maybe that just boils down to the taproot. But again, it's these little incremental differences. It's never been night and day for me, but
Yeah.
I do like to try to judge off of the clone. But you're right. Usually by the time I take that clone and it's vegging, that seed plant that I took the clone from goes immediately into flower. And I already have a good idea of, am I going to just continue to grow you for another 2 months or toss you? So,
right.
Yeah. And going back to kind of, you mentioned earlier, femmes, do you have I guess what is the ratio? Do you have more regular work than femmes, or is it kind of even on your website? Do you have a preference for making one or the other?
I prefer making reg seed. I'm just kind of old school that way. When I started out, I made the regular Romulan seeds, and then I made feminized seeds of just the Romulan, and then I put out some feminized crosses. And I was, when I got into this, I knew a lot about cannabis, a lot about strains, a lot about farmers and growers. I knew almost nothing about the breeder side of the industry. I'd never really got involved with it. Didn't really know too much. And so a lot of it was shocking and new to me and kind of a slap in the face. But I put out the feminized seeds, and I had, by the time I had like the third grower a year later complain that they had found a herm plant, I was like, I'm never making feminized seeds again. This is horrible. I'll never ever do this. And so I did. I spent 2 years only releasing regular seeds, didn't make any more feminized seeds crosses. But as time went on, I didn't really have any more, pileup of complaints of people with, I got a herm plant. I had a lot of people saying, please make more feminized crosses. This cross you made, they're so good. I want more. Please make more. And then I noticed, a lot of home growers, a lot of people that are limited in tents or in states where they can only grow so many plants, they can't deal with regular seeds. It's not worth it to them. If they pop 4 and that's their max that they can have, and they end up with 4 males, then they just wasted 2 months of their time in veg and everything. And so eventually, I got back to making feminized seeds, and now I don't have those issues that I had years ago where I feel like they're worthless and all that. I like making both. I prefer making rig seeds because to me, that's keeping the genetics around better. There isn't as much of a dead end brick wall right there with the genetics. You can keep cuts of everything, but I like that people have the males. I've had a ton of other breeders out there, not even in a collaboration, just buy my rig seed stuff and make their own strains off of the males they hunted through my stuff. And to me, that's like one of the highest honors as a breeder, is to have other people breeding with your work. And rig seeds don't really go away. Someone else can take them to F2, F3, F4 if they want to do it, and I haven't. You can't really do that with feminized seeds. There's a certain end point to it. But I get a lot of enjoyment off of my feminized crosses. Even though I don't like making them as much, they don't take as much effort for the feminized stuff. Rig seeds take a lot more effort to make, and they cost a lot more money. But I just find myself enjoying the process with fem seeds because it's a little quicker as a breeder, and I can get to the point where I'm excited about the White Widow and the Romulan cross I've made, and I can get to where I'm smoking that flower a lot faster, right?
Ooh, speaking my language right there. Wow.
That's the new one that'll be coming out soon. It's in testing right now.
That's awesome. I kind of agree with that sentiment too. It seems like home growers in particular, even commercial, I don't necessarily think there's a line. Feminized is really what they want, because I know a lot of people who have never had to sex a plant. They're maybe scared of sexing the plant. They're afraid of missing it. It's not as hard or detrimental as sometimes people make it out to be. But again, if you've never done it, fear is the mind killer. But femmes are easy. You're going to plant it, you're going to get a female, one out of, 10,000, maybe a male. I have seen that one in 10,000 be a true pure male.
It's the peer-reviewed science studies say 1 in 1,000 of feminized seeds will be a male. I've seen it several times now. But they're true males, and it's interesting. I haven't heard from anyone that's tried to pollinate with a true male from feminized seed yet, but from what I've gathered, there's no difference. You're not really breaking the genetic up to do that. It's a true male at that point, and it should be breedable.
Yeah, and like I encourage the person, they were in a facility, they have access to all kinds of testing and whatnot. I encouraged the person to do like a DNA test on it. I was curious what the chromosomes in it were, if it was carrying just all female, which it should be, but it obviously isn't expressing that way. So, again, curiosity. I wondered what happened with that one. Older techniques for reversals was really just stressing it until it showed intersex traits, whereas now we're more professional about it. We know
we're blocking it chemically and forcing it that way, not through stresses. It's a lot better. That's why those early feminized seeds, everyone complained and had issues, and in the early 2000s, everyone hated feminized seeds, even though a lot of people were buying them.
Yep. I do like the males for again, keeping them around. I've been making mainly femmes for the last few years, but I'm going to do some regulars here, maybe for myself, maybe for a few friends and stuff, but that'll give me more to work with. Because again, the femmes, you only have one copy of the genetics. You introduce the male, now you have two things. There's more potential in it, as you're kind of hinting to. But as someone who, has limited space, I don't have a huge warehouse where I can do, 2 years worth of work in 6 months.
Right.
I've been running pretty much and testing all my own stuff for the past couple of years. And this current grow, I've actually been able to branch out some things I've been sitting on for a while. Mean Gene, Freeborn Selections, is somebody who I enjoy their work. They have great stuff. I got a couple males from an unreleased black lime and cherry limeade that he just put into an auction. So I'm gonna do some work with that. Sisters grew really tall, so that I don't like. It's going to involve some work, probably multiple generations, but I would love to shorten it and keep the same profile. We'll see if that happens. Right. I wish it was paint by numbers, but we'll see what happens. But that just kind of brings me to the question of, have you been able to pop some other breeders' gears, or is there any other breeder who you are excited about or want to pop, or maybe have had something from in the past? You're like, yeah, that's, if I had to go spend my money on somebody else's pack, maybe where would I go shopping?
Yeah, so I, as a smoker, I enjoy pretty much everything. I mean, I've been around long enough to where I've just about smoked it all. I started smoking in the early 90s, and I mean, I've just about had every strain there is out there. Stop at about 2010 because there's so many new things coming out all the time after that it's impossible to keep up with that. But all the staples, everything everyone's talked about, and even the things that are not everyone got to try, like cat piss or hog's breath and things like that. I've tried all those and love them. I tend to have a lot of affinity and respect for people who are doing things differently than what everyone else in the industry is doing. So I look up to people like Coastal Seeds. He's breeding with a lot of land race stuff. He's doing a lot of preservation work stuff. And he's extremely highly educated. He's got like a master's degree in plant biology and breeding and all those things. And people like that. Doobie from Ace Seeds, he does the same thing. He's working with a lot of land race genetics. I think people like that are literally doing the Lord's work. They're they're making sure that the thousands of years of human interaction with this cannabis plant doesn't just disappear because of, something that happens, a war in a region or something, and it doesn't just wipe out this plant forever. Because they're, working on the shoulders of other people that have gone there and got the seeds, and they're making plants with those things that everyone can grow. Now they're not always the best things to grow as a smoker, because some of them take 15 weeks or whatever it is. They're totally unruly to try to grow in a tent. But if you do grow it well, it's the most unique experience that you can possibly find. It's nothing like what you're buying at the dispensaries. The flavor profiles are nothing like you've had before, and it's just, I really get into those things. But I also have like a bunch of just regular breeders, people that are popular and stuff that I look up to. I really like their work. I'm kind of like an underdog guy. So like Lupos, I've worked with his stuff, and he's not the most popular breeder out there, but he's done some great work. And so I pay a lot of attention to guys like that aren't trying to make a brand and a name for themselves. They're not really, you can tell they're not in it for the money. They're not in it for the fame. They're just in it because they love the plant. And I see people doing that, and I go, oh, let me try their work. And I find real gems. I constantly am growing seeds from other breeders. I'm constantly taking in cuts that other breeders have made and growing those out. And so as I'm doing my own testing of my own strains, I'm also, over here hunting through new stuff to possibly breed with. And the list is long of, breeders. I like Dynasty Genetics. I like
classic.
I mean, I could just go on and on about the different breeders' work that I like.
It's cool that
you had a Westport's grape juice. If anyone can get those seeds and grow that out, go get his Westport's grape juice. You guys will love that. It's good stuff.
Awesome. DP, shout out to DP. He was thrown in here. He said, rare to find flower that is just as good as it is in the hash form. Westport grape juice it is. I got a shout out. I have nothing to do with that. Well, with what he's talking about, I got to shout out John, aka the Grow Space Killer. He is just an exceptional hash maker. I think he's got 17, probably 20 plus awards now for hash, and he is one of the people who is holding on to my Westport grape juice. So he is doing phenomenal stuff with that one. And that one,
I would love to try some hash of that. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Whoever that was.
Let's make it. Let's make it so. Dude, he's done a good job of getting it around to people too. I've had some awesome unexpected people hitting it, just Danny Danko, High Time senior editor way back, doing his own thing.
He's who bred Biscotti. A lot of people think Cookies made it, but Dan's the breeder of Biscotti. Cookies bought it from him.
Okay. He's someone who I learned a lot from decades ago, just through like High Times and whatnot. So I've always looked up to Dan, and he seems to be a really nice guy. We've talked many times, never met in person. Anyways, long story short, he was hitting the Westport grape juice. I was like, get out of here. So those little moments, it's fun.
Someone like a few months ago, I can't remember now, was the big podcast where people smoke and try different things, and they were like, oh, they're smoking one of your strains, and I just lost my mind. I was like, oh my god, look at that.
It's so rad, dude. It's cool to see other people enjoying it. It's like, again, we don't do this necessarily for like peer validation. We have many other goals that are so far above that. But when you do see somebody smoking it and enjoying it, or you see, somebody tagged you in their grow on the, Instagram or their YouTube page, and you look at their garden, you're like, damn, that's good.
It takes me right back. I'm like 14 all over again every time that happens. I'm just a little giddy kid, like, I love it.
Oh, I appreciate your time. I know we're well over an hour here. Hopefully, hang out a couple more minutes, ask you a couple more questions.
Yeah. I'm good. Still got the house to myself right now, and the dogs are still sleeping, so we're good.
Yeah, shoot. Now, knock on wood, now that you mention it, I haven't heard mine moving for a while, so let's keep it that way. Oh, males. Breeding with males, though. It's something I always ask every breeder. how do you select males? We always get tons of answers. Some of them are mythical. Others, like mine, is usually like, well, you kind of choose what you have. And it's really, if you're
Right.
able to pollinate well, let me preface that again. Grow the sisters, know the line before you decide. Don't just get 4 males and be like, I'm gonna take you, you're the best. No, be familiar with the
Right.
line. But in reality, because I haven't been able to individually test, all 4 males against the same progeny, run the offspring, see which one contributed, which one gave the most dominant traits, which went the direction I want. Because I don't have the space and time to do that, I'm usually just selecting the one that doesn't, nut first, and one that has a great structure, if I can, stem rub. But that's me. Hopefully I haven't given away your answers, but what do you look for like in a male? Is there any magic to it, or what's going on?
Not a whole lot of magic. It's the same process I use for hunting females. And just like you said, it's really key if you're hunting a male from a progeny of regular seeds to also grow out the females. You don't, if you're thinking, I want a male of Kim D crossed with, E85, whatever it is. You don't just immediately sex test them and throw all the females away. You have to grow out the females first. You have to get a really good impression of what that progeny is giving you, because you'll see different morphology in the leaf structure, different nodal spacing, different things in the females that you can then really easily attach to your males. If things are not really homogeneous in that progeny, it makes it a lot easier to hunt through the males and to know this male probably leans a lot like that female. And that's probably going to be the end result of the flower that I cross it with. But I do the same thing I do with females. I start in the seedling stage. I'm culling out through that. Seeing how they clone and root. I don't ever want to select a keeper parent that doesn't root well for everyone, that doesn't root well for me. It doesn't cross and check off all the boxes before you get to the final stage, which is with a male. How does it breed? What is its resultant progeny? And what I did, because before I started making rig seeds, I was already I had this hobby thing that I was making on my own. I made a double poly hybrid with all these landrace strains. And so I was working on that, and I had already kind of started hunting for a male through the Romulan seeds before people even asked me. So it was like, okay, I got to finish this hunt for a male. And I was, at the time, I had like 3 or 4 males that were really, really good for, and they were kind of a little bit different. And I was breeding them with, I can't remember right now, some Southeast Thai varietal. Or maybe it was South America, I don't know. But I was breeding them with something. And then I kind of popped seeds of each male with that one female to see, was it male number 1 that came out a little better, male number 2, male number 3, number 4. And through that, I narrowed things down to 2. There were 2 males that I didn't like what I was seeing. And then I took the 2 males and bred them with a couple different things and then ran those together. And that was like an instant way to just get rid of that male. He's pointless. This is the one. And I had that male for years. I ended up only getting rid of him because he started throwing pollen and veg. I just kept him around too long. And the new male that I selected from Romulan, I did the same thing. I, tried multiple different males after hunting for a while. So I've got a new male that I use that's going to be for the IX2 Romulan rig seeds when that comes out. That's going through testing right now. This male's great because I've never had any problems with him throwing even ball sacks and veg. He just won't even show at all. But he's a great breeder. And I've crossed him with a bunch of other things. None of that's come out yet, but you'll see a lot of the stuff that I've put out in feminized crosses that have been winners. You'll see here soon. I've got some rig seed stuff coming out with the new male. So things like White Widow, I'll have probably like an Irie Maiden that's a rig seed and a Romscotty that's a rig seed. And I've got a Northern Whites number 5 cross coming, and some good stuff.
Okay, Jeremy Anderson was asking, said, will regular Romulan seeds be released again? He's able to find the S1 feminized, but is that part of what you're talking about now?
Yeah, so right now, there's only a few seed banks that still have the rig seeds in stock. And Ace Seeds in Spain, they were the first seed bank that ever picked me up. Ace Seeds only sells heirloom and landrace stuff, so he only carries my Romulan regular seeds.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
and that's the
Cool.
final stock of it. He's got some, and Mandela Seeds has some in Spain. I don't think really any of my US seed banks have any left. I'm all out of stock too, because I've got a new version coming out. And the aim of the new version, everyone absolutely loved the current one that's out there. It's the name of it is Romulan backcross 1 in quotes. So it's Romulan BX1. That's the name. The filial generation is IX1. It's an intergenerational cross. So it's an F1 Romulan cross with an F4 Romulan. What I've got now is it's going to be an intergenerational cross 2. And that's kind of just a little bit of a shortcut for me to get things to where the aim is to have most of the females or all of the females come out in the rig seeds very similar or identical to the clone cut that I have. Right now, there's a little bit of variety in the IX1 seeds. So people will have, some outliers that will pop up. Most of them are pretty much all the same with some only slight variety of like flavor and smell. But I'd like to have it to where all the females that people are getting are pretty much a carbon copy of the clone cut that I've got, because that's what I want people to be smoking.
And that, again, takes time and effort for people who aren't familiar with the process, takes a lot of time. And that is, those are the breeders that ultimately I like to support. And those are the breeders who I'm happy to pay a little bit more for, because the amount of work that goes into these things is ridiculous. It's like, like an artist who paints a huge painting. You're never going to get paid per hour what it was actually worth for your time, but
Right.
You can still make it worth your time. And a lot of that is the experiences that people get, the feedback that you get. And, if you put out something good, people will come back and try something else. That's another thing about the long play, as I call it. It's like, don't be a bright light and burn out. Be steady, right. Be solid, build that foundation, because the longer you do it, just, the taller your building will be. So it all starts with a good foundation and the right principles, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly my goal. Is I see a lot of people that want to try to get to the top as quick as they can, and I don't ever want to be at the top. I just want to be around for the next 20 years. That's all I care about.
I just want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. To get back to his question, though, you should see the new version of the Romulan rig seeds within about a year. They're in testing right now with all my public testers. So if it passes through that, and everything looks really good with the testing so far, so I don't see any problems with it being released. I'll have to make a big bulk seed stock production run, and once I've got all enough made to put out there, then you'll see the Romulan rig seeds get restocked. And around the same time, you should start seeing some new regular seed crosses too coming out.
Gosh, when you said bulk seeds, my heart just goes, shucking the seeds. Like I'm in Washington. It's hard for me to get anything crispy dry where you could just do this and they fall out. So I really am like hand shucking almost every dang seed, dude. Do you have
if anyone's ever sorted seeds and they don't know what he's talking about, what he just mentioned, so there's a part of it where you're just going like this and trying to crumble up all the flour, and if you can't get it dried out enough, holy crap, you do that for like 5 minutes as hard as you can, and your hands are like swollen and numb and you can't move them, and then you got to keep doing it, because there's a lot more to get through. That's the absolute most difficult labor part of being a breeder and selling seeds, is the part of sorting the seeds and shucking them and bucking them and getting them cleaned and then packaged. It's a fucking nightmare. Is what it is.
Well said.
Years ago, I built one of the zigzag wooden vacuum machines to sort my seeds, and those do a pretty decent job. They help you out a lot. They get a lot of the plant material out of the way. But you end up being left with a lot of, you got to separate the white seeds out, and you got to, you got to know to look at certain seeds. Some of them would be like false good ones, and, they're hollow and they're too light. And so there's things you learn over years, but I eventually, a couple of years ago, invested and bought in a sample sorting machine. So if you've ever seen like what James Loud has, he has this massive thing the size of a car, and it threshes the weed and does all this stuff, and it's like perfectly sorted for you at the end. This is like a small version of that. It doesn't cost nearly as much.
Okay.
It's got a little tiny thresher about this big on top, so I can put in like an ounce at a time, and
Perfect.
it'll clean it and sort it pretty well. And what I end up with at the end is a lot better than the zigzag vacuum machines. There's still a little bit of sorting and picking up some bad things there, but that just you just sit there and you hand package seeds up one by one, and that's where I do that sorting part of it. But yeah, it's really difficult to do.
It's if you think trimming is a beast,
Oh yeah,
pollinate a plant, man.
yeah.
Um,
I don't look at trim gel isn't even it's not even that word anymore. It's just a thing you have to do, trim gel. But I got plants hanging right now that are more than well dried out enough to sort the seeds, and I'm every now and then I'm like, oh, I'll do one or two today, and so I do a couple
put on a
plants that day,
movie.
and yeah,
Yeah. Put on a movie, turn on the UFC, whatever's on TV. All right, got my trim tray, my drink. Yeah, hours.
yeah,
But
I've got a whole process. Like you mentioned, I wait for like a really hot sunny day. My plants will hang up in a nice stable environment in my basement, so they're I'm at around 1660 the whole time. They don't have swings, so the seeds will be great doing that. And then I wait for a nice hot sunny day, and I buck off the plants, and then put them in like a large tray that's kind of shallow and spread it out, so it's not too thick of a layer, and let the sun just dry it the hell out, so it just powderizes the flower. And then I can crumble it up really easy and gently. I just kind of go like this, and it all crumbles out when it works right. If it's not a sunny
yeah,
day, or if it had too much moisture in it, it doesn't always. Some strains are really dense, and you're just trying to grind the flower up. So I do that and get it down to where you're just left with all this powdered weed, and it's filled with seeds. And then I can run that through my sorting machine, and then I end up with these little containers. It kind of separates them, and then I pour them into jars and store them then, in a nice stable environment until they're ready to go out and get tested and all that stuff.
okay. And that was what I was going to ask too. Next is just kind of storage. Like, how do you prefer to store them yourself there? Do you keep? Is it almost like flour in Colorado, where you don't keep everything in one jar because you open it and the humidity or lack of humidity gets in there? Do you keep separate jars? Do you keep just like cold storage? Is there a preferred method for your bulk seeds versus your
Once they
personal?
once they go into jars, and it's lessons I've had to learn over years. I used to try to process the seeds too soon, and as you're grinding them up, you're actually like stripping the tiger stripe layer off, because it's just this really thin skin. People don't realize that. It's actually kind of meaningless whether or not it has the tiger stripe. It's just there for camouflage against pests and some other things. And you can really easily just take that layer off, and it just doesn't look like the same seed anymore. But I've learned to let them hang longer, let them get cured on the plant, and so then when I go to process them, they're hardened up, everything's good. So by the time I'm putting them in jars, I'm not too overly concerned about storage methods and things like that. I've got seeds right now that they're just sitting in my dresser drawer, because I sell so many of them and give out so many of them. I still, like, every few months I go and pop some to see if the germination rates have changed. It's still 100%, and I've been doling seeds out of that container for 5 years, and it just sits in my bedroom drawer. But my house doesn't really swing in temperature too much. We have hot summers and cold winters, but I've got central air and all that, and it keeps things pretty stable. I like my house cold. It's usually around 68 all the time. Most of the stuff gets put in larger jars. It's all put together as one, and then it's kept in my basement. So it's free of light. The basement's almost always about 60 degrees, and when it's in the jar, they're going in there probably at 15-20% humidity per each seed and stuff. So it's just, it's great. It's fine. I don't have to worry about anything. I've had issues in the past where I put seeds in too soon and they molded up on me, and I couldn't sell any of those seeds. And like I said, I've processed them too soon and just rubbed the tiger stripe layer off. And so I've had to learn lessons the hard way over the years how to do it. Now I'm still trying to get to when I make a seed run that I spend as much effort and time and actually get the harvest just like I would if it was flour. Because even though that's how I make my money is from the seeds, I kind of have this disconnect when I'm pollinating a room and making seeds. I'm not like putting all of that effort in like I would if it's flour, and I'm going to smoke it to make sure this plant doesn't have any problems, right? And the issues that I have often now is all like Pure Crush and Ramscotty. Those are two strains I've made that I keep trying to restock and meet the demand from the customers, and I just can't keep up with what people want. But part of it is because I keep making fucking huge mistakes. Like Pure Crush, I just did a nice run of it. I was going to restock everyone, and I totally fucked up and let the auto watering overwater the plants. I didn't check on them, and it was too far beyond. And so I got like a couple packs of seeds off all these plants. A couple packs, that's it. And I was looking at hundreds of packs that I would have got off it. So I got to pay a little bit more attention and make sure that I'm not wasting my time making seeds, because I do that a lot. I'll have half the plants are great while the seeds are great, and I really needed seeds off that plant and that plant and that plant, and I totally fucked up and killed them and just didn't pay enough attention, because I'm putting so much effort into all these other grows and these things going on. The seeds are kind of like, oh, they'll make themselves, and I just kind of let go and don't really focus like I do on the flower stuff. So I've got to stop doing that. Especially to get Pure Crush back in people's hands, because I get an email or a DM every day from someone, when's Pure Crush come back? And I'm like, as soon as I can make more. I'm trying.
That is a heartbreaker. I tend to give my flowering plants more baby gloves than I do the seeded plants. Gosh, you're kind of right.
Yeah.
Like,
as soon as you get like 3 or 4 weeks into seeded, and you see them forming really well, and you're like, they're on their own now. There's nothing really I need to do. And that's always what I do. And I walk away, and it's like, it seems like every other seed run, I have some issues, and it's always with the plants I absolutely needed the seeds from. So yeah, so you'll see, if anyone's watching and you're looking to get Pure Crush, there'll be a really small restock, not just 2 packs. I know, but we've got some other seeds. There'll be a really small one with the Romscotty coming up. The Romscotty is just fine. All the seeds are great. But the Pure Crush will be probably, you're looking at like end of summer before I can put out enough to where everyone can get it.
Okay, well, good things can't be rushed. And here's just a picture of that Romscotty F1 here. Again, you got the black label certified up in the corner. Currently sold out, but that's what we're talking about, restocking. And then right below that was the Pure Crush.
And we didn't really cover this either. So the Romscotty and the Pure Crush, those photos there, the lab work on both of those, all of those are photos from my stress grows, the poorly grown stuff. So
really?
I'm not showing you the really well-grown stuff.
Wow.
Now, It's different. It's different now. I'm starting to make a shift. So what I explained earlier was that I do a good grow first, and then I do a terrible stress grow second. That I realized at a certain point recently that's a little unfair to my test growers, because what I'm doing is I've grown it, it looks great, but I haven't figured out if it doesn't like stresses and all these things. And I send it off to find that. Ellie.
It's the big one there. Sounds like a happy friend.
Yeah, she's getting excited. So anyway, so now what I do is I do the stress grow first, and then I do the good grow second. And the photos are from the good grow. So like the rock salts photos are from the good grow. The Ivory Maiden are still from the bad grow. But you'll see like some of the gingers that'll come out in May, that's still going to be from the bad grow. But everything after that, we should be changing that completely. All the photos will be from our good grows. But you'll notice if you're looking at these, like Communion looks beautiful, but look at the Mellow Kitty. You see some problems there, even though it looks pretty. You can tell these are stress grown plants. They're not grown perfectly. And that's what I've done for years, to show people like, this is your worst case scenario. If you grow it really well, you're going to get better results. That rock salts right there was grown, not perfectly, but grown really well. And so that's, a good example. And people were kind of missing that for years, that I was doing this and not noticing. And then I had other people that were kind of complaining, saying, I'd like to see it grown well, though. I appreciate what you're doing, but I'd really like to see what it looks like when it's grown well. So I'm changing that up. And I'll probably still take pictures of both, but I do all the photography myself. And that's another chore, it's another task, and it's difficult. So I might not always take the good and the bad pictures of everything, but for the future stuff that's coming out, I'm going to try to focus on showing you the good rather than the bad pictures. I'll probably still take pictures of both when I can, when I think about it. But you can tell, like that Romagranate, that was a terrible grow. It, barely made it through harvest. It was a really good cultivar, but if people see that, and some of them don't know that that's what I'm showing you. It's like, this is intentionally poorly grown, because I'm not really over the top with saying that. I'm not making it this, sell piece. But the
No.
reason I do it is because it protects home growers. I'm showing you, this is, if you grow it and you don't know what you're doing and you totally fuck it up, like that Pure Crush, that's probably exactly what it's going to look like for you at home if you've never even grown before. But if you really know how to grow, you're going to see something way better than that. And that's why everyone's trying to get Pure Crush. That's what it looks like when it's grown poorly. And I've already seen it myself. When it's grown really well, it's phenomenal and it's really good smoke.
Yeah, again, I like to set realistic expectations for people. And again, if we can under promise and over deliver, nothing beats that. Like any experience in life, if you're under promised and you're happy with what you expect to get, and then you get something better, that's a win.
Yep.
Kind of speaking on a couple more questions. This one is just my own pure curiosity, because I don't, for the past few years, I have been working with feminized stuff, but it's always been regular for me. That's what I've been used to. That's how I started. Again, I started making seeds just to preserve my own ability to grow in the future, because I didn't know when I'd have access again. And it just kind of blossomed from there. But so with like selfing, with fems, with reversing, how I understand it is a lot of times you can kind of get the best and the worst expression from the genetic potential. And it's been from what I was led to believe, or what I've been told, is, you're pretty much going to get, like the identical version of it. If you have something that you love in a clone form and you want to put it in a seed form, well, just reverse it and you'll have like the same thing. But I've been getting a bit different than that. And the Westport grape juice specifically is an example I'm using. So I reversed that. It's called the Westport's Posse. So that's available on my website, chadwestport.com. A lot of people have been growing that, but that's the reverse Westport grape juice. And I didn't get consistent exactly what the Westport grape juice is. What I got was its lineage, like almost individualized. They're 1 in 20 will be spot on for the Westport grape juice, 1 in 20, but like 2 in 10 are just an all gas pheno. And that is just a background note in the Westport grape juice, but it's clearly evident where it came from, because it's one note, it's single, and it's easy to pick out. If people are growing it, leaves hang out like this, it's got a tucked leaf pheno. That's the all gas note. You'll spot it within the first 3 sets of leaves. But has it been your experience that you are getting maybe a wider expression when you reverse versus something that's more identical to the plant that you've been reversing?
Yeah, so the only 2 things I've released as S1 self plants is the Romulan feminized, and I've made communion feminized seeds, which communion came out as F1 feminized seeds before I released the S1. I've had several things I've made that were exactly like you're seeing, and I just never put them out there. In my experience, there's probably a lot of people that have done this with, great legend cuts and everything, and no problems, no issues, nothing to worry about.
Starting material makes a difference, yes.
Yeah. There are just certain genetics that, whatever it is, where they're at in the filial generation or however many subdominant, genes, all these different things kind of come into it, where they open up once you self them genetically. Other ones don't. They kind of close in and you end up with mostly copies of what it is. I don't think that that's the norm by any means. I think the norm is what you're seeing. The norm is you self something and it kind of opens up the progeny, and you get, if you're lucky, you get 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 or carbon copies of the cut. And I think that's what a lot of people have released in the past. From what I've grown from other breeders that are S1 seeds, they're trying to preserve this cut of, Chocolope, whatever it is. I'll find 1 in 5, 1 in 10 are exactly what I'm looking for. I got lucky with the communion, and I got lucky with the Romulan feminized seeds. When I made the Romulan feminized seeds, I had no fucking clue what I was doing. And that was just complete sheer luck, because about half of them are pretty much carbon copies. They might have some slight variation differences. But what I do see in the S1 is a lot more, runts and mutations, a bunch of different types of mutations, not always bad. Sometimes they go away really early. but different things with the leaves, different things with the nodal spacing, things like that. And I think that's where we see, when you've got plants where there's a family forming a bud on it. I think some of that stuff that we've got where it's sticking around in the genetics is because people used selfed plants to breed with, and then they're just mutations. They're thinking this is part of the genetic, but it brings it out in the progeny of that self plant that you cross with something else. I think a lot of that has to do with there's something within the self genes where it's not like it's broken genetic code or it's damaged or anything. It's just you're kind of opening things up at that point, and it gets a little more loose.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your experience with that, because that's one thing I always like to ask people too. Again, a lot of times that's the beauty about the shows like this, other shows, community in general, is we're able to crowdsource our information, because this plant, you can't speed the plant up. You only get so many opportunities per year to kind of grow and experience it. So yeah, it's good to hear it. It does make sense. And if you start with something that's ultra stable to begin with, I would expect fewer expressions, but cool to hear that
it's a lot like
you as well.
It's a lot like males. You don't really know what you're going to get until you see the result. So I would never, I would never say that to anyone myself. I would never say, oh, just S1 it and you'll get, it's going to be perfect. I would, from my experience, if you S1 it, you're going to be hunting through those seeds. But that's not always the case. There are plenty of things that I've grown from other breeders that are pretty tight. I've seen lots of people grow. I can't give you an example, but I've seen lots of people grow something that was S1 from another breeder, and it was like 6 out of 6 were just exactly what they were looking for. So that happens. That's out there. I think probably the norm is somewhere around, you get a few per pack, if it's decent. Otherwise, you've got, there are plenty of things out there too where it's 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in a little bit more than that before you find the exact thing. Because I've seen people hunt through S1 seeds trying to find this particular cut, and they can't find it. But it's self from that cut, and so there's examples of the whole spectrum out there.
It's the anomaly. It shows you really how special of a recessive trait you got in that plant when you got it. That's something to hold on to for the future. Right. But yeah, it's again all about numbers, and the more we test, the better data we get. I'm into that. Gosh, I have more. I could keep you here all day. I've got more things done, but I want to hit one more question maybe before I turn the floor over to you, because I always like to turn the floor over. But I noticed I want to help set this up one for tomorrow. You've got another awesome interview going on with Mr. James Loud on the James Loud Network. That's cool. I have been. He's someone who I've followed for many years. Again, that's how I was introduced to you years and years ago on his podcast. The person to the name. But it was fun for me to go down there, is what I was trying to say. It was cool to go and check out his facility. When you're saying that big seed sorter, I'm like picturing myself in that room looking at that machine, and you said ounce at a time. I've got to find that machine. I've got to look up what you're talking about.
The one he's got's like you got to order it from. They've got distributor warehouses here in America, but it's made in Germany. It's made overseas. I got the small little version of it. It can fit on a desk. It's big. The version I have still weighs a couple 100 pounds, and it's true industrial farming equipment. Because that's basically what this company does. They're making it for hemp seed farmers to sort and instruct the seeds, because there are plenty of professional hemp seed farmers, and they have to have those seeds sorted perfectly and cleaned perfectly to make anywhere near the top dollar per seed. But yeah, he went and found this company, and he was one of the first cannabis breeders that noticed there was this equipment out there, because none of us even knew it existed really. And he showed up with that thing, and everyone, I remember when he first put it up on his Instagram page, all these breeders were showing up going, where'd you get that? How do I get that?
Yeah, right.
But they're, it's like 25, 30 grand by the time you get one of those machines into your hands, delivered and everything. Easily. They're really expensive. Even the one I bought, like I had to save up, and it was a huge investment. It was like almost 10 grand for this thing. But when you're dealing with that many seeds and you're sorting that many seeds, it's worth it. But yeah, his whole facility going down there was, like I said, I don't get out much. He tried to get me on to go down on the podcast for over a year. And it wasn't like I didn't want to. I kept saying yes. And then they had to reschedule. And then I had to reschedule. And there was just all these things that got in the way. But I finally got down there. And man, that place is amazing. I guess he kind of just finished it. The rooms were just starting to get going. And I don't even want to guess how much money went into building that place. But holy hell, it's like if you just fantasize of what's the craziest, coolest facility you could have for growing cannabis in, he went and made it. That's what it is.
He did. I loved seeing all the different rooms. I loved seeing like the tissue culture lab and that kind of area, how everything is isolated, like really set up for the future. Plus he's got a bunch of the things on the outside too that he could do other cool things with. But did he have anything flowering at that time, or where was everything still in veg? Because I missed that smell.
It was a bit of a madhouse when I was there. I was the first podcast, and they were just getting set up. There were other podcasters coming to do an interview after me. I don't know how many, but one of them arrived right as we were wrapping ours up. And James was all over the place. He like shook my hand, said hi, and then had to go sign these books for a little while. And I was talking with Ryan while he was setting up his cameras. And so it was a bit chaotic when I was there. And we didn't really get a whole lot he gave me like a brief little tour. I got to see. He opened the door to the tissue culture lab room, and he opened the door to the fertigation room. And I just kind of stood there with my jaw on the floor to the fertigation room. And he opened a couple rooms that had like some clones and stuff in it, but I didn't really see anything flowering. But he didn't show me all the rooms.
No, that's cool though, that you got to go in there and take a walk around. I kind of hit him up ahead of time, like, because again, you arrange travel to go visit him, and I'm like, hey man, can I bring my camera? Can we do a little something while I'm there? So he was able to carve out a little bit of time. But at the same time, we were in one of the rooms, and he's like, I got to go do something real quick, and some of his other staff were in there, and we were just kind of going through looking for males in these plants, and it was like a half hour later. I'm just in heaven, because I used to work commercially, and it's been a while since. Anybody who's worked commercially, or anybody who's opened the door to a big room after the lights have been on for a while, there's a distinctive odor that is just so beautiful. It's warm, it's thick, and it smells like plants.
Heaven.
I missed that.
It smells like heaven.
It is. Walking into that place, I was like, just do whatever you need to do, James. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. But I wanted to mention that because you are going to be on the show tomorrow, which is Sunday, March 16th. And on the Pacific Coast, it is 11 a.m. PST. So that would be 2 p.m. EST. Any highlights, or you want to set that one up? Anything to say?
We filmed it. I went down there a little over 3 weeks ago now. So
oh, cool.
Shit, man. My memory is terrible. I really don't remember half of anything anymore. So I couldn't really tell you any highlights. I mean, the clip he posted up on Instagram to promo the interview thing, I think is kind of good. There's a bunch of things like that. I mean, I've done quite a few podcasts over the years, and this one, yours and mine right now, has been really unique, different. But a lot of them end up kind of the same way. I like repeat myself. I say the same things. A lot of people are like, what are you dropping next? And, that's, it's just kind of all about the salesman part of it. And it's not really as much about sitting down and having conversations. With James, it's just a conversation. I mean, we just kind of jump from subject to subject and cover all kinds of different things. I don't know what actually got edited and made final cut. I said some things about my dad that because my mom really wants to watch this interview. She's all excited about it. And I'm like, I don't know if they edited this part out, but I said something about how my mom and dad's relationship started and how old she was and how old she was. And I don't think my mom wants that being out in the public, but I'm not one to pull punches and spread bullshit. I just say it like it is. So James just brought up this subject, and I started talking, and I was like, and that's just what came out of my mouth. So we'll see what makes the final cut. I have no idea, but it was, we did the interview. It's like well over an hour and a half.
Nice. I'm right there with you. It took, I think, about a month or so for it to air. I was curious. I had no idea what I said. I wanted to watch the episode. I'm like, what did I even do? We smoked a permanent midnight joint halfway through it, and both of us just from there
Yeah,
we
you'll
just
see.
kind of lost the plot.
I think no
So
matter how they edit it, you'll see very clearly by the end of this, James and I are just fucking lit. I mean, when I left that place, I barely remember leaving. I was fine and all that, but I like it just hit
yeah,
me. Like I was smoking, some weed of my own, and then he was passing joints back and forth, and all of a sudden it was like right towards the end, it just slapped me in the face, and I was like, oh no, I can't function anymore. You know how like you can walk and people can say things to you, and you go, uh-huh, but that's about all you're capable of doing. That's where I was.
slow-mo turn. Yep.
Yep.
I feel
Yep.
you. Well, that's cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'll be in the chat, and I know a lot of these folks that are watching today will be in the chat too. We're up to 420 people tuned in, which is awesome because
Nice. Good
I
number.
want people. Yeah, I want people to experience your genetics. I want people to experience what you have to offer because you're working with some great stuff. I personally like, the methods and the reasoning that you have for doing it. So again,
Thanks,
thank
brother.
you for all of that. It's important, man. We need good people doing it for the right reasons who are more interested in the long game. And I will see you in 20 years and we'll talk again about, can you believe we're just push button growing now? This is
Right.
great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
can't wait, man. I can't wait.
but before we go though, please let people know where they can find you. Any websites, any shout outs, anything you want. I always want to turn the floor over, to the guests because sometimes I don't ask everything. But is
Yeah.
is there
No,
is there
I'll,
anything
I'll
that
I'll keep it quick and brief. I know we've been on here a long time, and I got to get off myself here. Anyone that wants to follow me, know more about me, um, if you have Instagram, that's the best place. That's the best kind of account or social media thing to follow. It's Romulan Genetics with the number 2 at the end on Instagram.
down in the
If you don't
show
have an
notes?
Instagram, go to www.romulangenetics.com. It's on the screen right now. And on the bottom of every page of our website, there's little icons for like our YouTube social and our Twitter X social and all that. Those are the only official accounts. We don't use TikTok and stuff. So if you see us somewhere else, we have a lot of people that impersonate my company and scam people
Hey,
because we're kind of, people know about us
yeah,
and everything. But so I got a lot of people that pretend they're me, steal my pictures off the Instagram and make a whole account. And they'll tell you, oh, you won free seeds or whatever. And just go to my website and send an email if you ever think anything like that's going on. And we'll tell you if it's legit or not. In most cases, it isn't. But the website's got, we've got all of our seed bank partners listed there. So we've got a whole page where you can click on everyone that's, carrying our seeds currently. But the Instagram one is where I put up, the good photos. There's a lot of good information there. If you want to kind of bullshit with me, go to Twitter. I do a lot of that. It's like a little community on Twitter. I don't have as many followers, and we all just kind of talk shit to each other and have fun and make jokes and help
hey,
educate each other on
hang
growing
out.
and stuff. And yeah, exactly. Twitter is really like that. It's like the cannabis community over there. There's either people at war with each other or people who are just chilling, hanging out, smoking weed together. Instagram is like it's kind of like a magazine. There's a lot of ads in it. Everyone's kind of
Yeah.
selling you something they're trying to put on a face. But Twitter, everyone's just, I mean, people go wild on Twitter. Everyone can see what you're saying and replying to others, and people they just say it. It's great. People won't do that on Instagram at all.
No, I gotta get on Twitter or X.
Yeah,
I used to use
it's
social
not the
media.
best for trying to promote your company, but it's a really good place if you want like a little community. It's like a little island of people.
Nice. Well, we're carving out a pretty good island of people here, and I want to thank everybody in chat for hanging out today. Thank you for hanging out always. Lady in the Rain says just followed on Instagram. Thank you very much. And again, yes, Romulan Genetics Instagram is down in the show notes. But you guys, everybody watching, have a great day. Jake, thank you so much for taking the time to come and hang out and just bullshit with me today.
Thanks for having me on, Chad. This was great, and thanks to everyone watching too. I wish I could wish we had little screens and I could just see all of you watching. It'd be great.
Cool, man. My pleasure. Guys, everybody in chat, I will see you around the community. Don't forget, Jake's going to be on James Loud Show tomorrow morning. So I will see you in the chat there. Everybody have a good day. Party on.